Hi. Yeah. Let me start with a personal question. Who of you in this room wants to become a leader? Please raise your hand. Please raise your hand if you want to become a leader. Yes, typically in a business school, by questioning like this, almost all hands are put up. Of course, it's good to want to become a leader. We need people who take responsibility for the future. Of course, we need people who show courage and humbleness. But are you prepared? Are you prepared to show courage and humbleness? Why should anybody led by you? Are you prepared to serve and to contribute? Of course, there's tons of leadership research out there. There's tons of insights. But one thing is for sure. You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. And self-leadership needs a compass, hardly available just around the corner. And real leadership is something where people don't necessarily love you. Therefore, you better entertain the question of what good leadership is about. I don't want to talk about great leadership. Just good leadership, I would say, is enough. And my message today is straightforward. You may say even simple. Leadership is about serving and contributing. Good leadership is contributing leadership. Good leadership is about integrating courage and humbleness. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the very spirit in which my colleagues and myself designed what we call the Leipzig Leadership Model. Leipzig Leadership Model is an early stage model effort created by the faculty of HHL in order to come up with an idea of what it means to lead for results by putting people first. It's the very idea of finding purpose in an effective, responsible, and of course, entrepreneurial way. And this attempt is meant to ground our thinking very deeply in the European history of thought, of how people can justify the exercise of power over others. Justifying power over others, to me, is one of the great challenges these days, where it's about to contribute and not just to exercise hybris or megalomania or whatever fantasies superheroes or superwomen might have in mind. And by doing so, we also try to resonate a lot with the spirit of the place, which is Leipzig's history, great entrepreneurial history, why we also called it the Leipzig Leadership Model. And if there's one simple advice in this model is, if in doubt, ask why and what for. And with this spirit in mind, let me walk you through a little bit the model we developed and called the Leipzig Leadership Model. In the light of whatever challenges, grand challenges we call it these days, digitalization, globalization, or whatever, the typical response of leaders might have been in the past, or even in the current situation, faster, smarter, bigger, higher, better, or whatsoever. But this is probably not the answer we need in times of challenging everything what's possible to challenge in our postmodern or modern or even postmodern condition, where it's wise, as we recommend, to first look inside. And this is what we call purpose. You could say, well, this purpose talk is cheap. Many people these days talk purpose, consultants, politicians, religious leaders, corporate leaders, they all talk purpose. This purpose talk is all over the place, like in inflation. And all of them appeal to higher aims, or what they call transformative experience, uplifting your identity or whatever. And they don't forget that also purpose is a double-edged sword. On the individual level, questions like this: why do I get up in the morning? how do I survive hardship and misery, or even what's my gift to the world? These type of questions are lifelong questions and never answered until we die, so to speak. On a corporate level, the purpose talk these days is about disruptive business models where we need a polar star, some fixed point in order to survive in this what we call the VUCA world, where business models fail again and are built up, not just because we know what we do, but because we have a sense of why we do what we do. And this goes far beyond the traditional visions and missions discussion. And bearing in mind this nice combination of individual and collective purpose makes people motivated, comes, as I already said, with a price. Comes at a price, meaning if we re-enter this discussion of what it means to be a means for an end, and there are definitely meaningless ends if there's not some purpose within, or power becomes arbitrary if it's only about means. And we saw in the 20th century what it means if leaders, in particular political leaders, start to persuade and convince people to sacrifice even their lives for a purpose or an end, which seemed to justify or legitimize almost any mean. We have to be careful not to confuse means and ends. In our stage of this developed capitalism, we have to restart a discussion of what it means to get the means and discussions right. And bearing in mind this tragedy of purpose, being a great motivator at the same time, also with all its unproductive energies, we dare to put this at the center stage of our model. Because we felt it's not the purpose to say, I want what I want. And our thinking, a purpose is, I want what I want because I want to contribute, to serve some greater good, to make oneself a means to some end which is bigger than oneself, which is bigger than me. And this type of thinking might be attractive with all the dangers inherent to this concept of purpose. Once you have a better why, and we say start with why these days, business models start with why, new ideas create jobs with an intention, with a purpose, and all the things will come. We argue purpose is not enough. It takes entrepreneurial spirit to make it alive, to bring attention to reality, to make a difference in the real world. But still, it can be a toxic combination of having a great purpose and being entrepreneurial without what we call in this model a responsible behavior. Responsibility is a kind of a boundary condition of purpose and entrepreneurial spirit in order to make things legitimate. It's about legitimate authority, to have a reason why we do what we do and how we do it in a responsible way means not being only legally compliant, but also from a moral point of view, searching for legitimate authority. Having a why, having a how, at the end of the day also requires to deliver results. If we argue our leadership model is about delivery results in the sense of things have to be effective. Right things and doing things right. You know, this discussion was about efficiency, makes the entire picture only holistic. I could stop here and say, this is it. Let's try and face all the potentials and conflicts and inherent dilemmata, paradoxes, potentials, conflicts, to align those forces, those four different areas of attention. But maybe the heart of the Leipzig Leadership Model is something else. The heart of the model, as already mentioned, is it should make a difference to other parties, to stakeholders, to the outside world. Therefore, contributing means asking yourself whether your contribution serves the individual, the organization, and society. And let me stay with a minute with this kind of thinking. As we know from our research, it's a great motivator if people feel they belong to a company which serves the greater good, what we call common good, or in our research, what we call public value. Public value is a kind of connecting device, connecting mechanism between the individual and society, being in an organization with business models who somehow help the individual grow and at the same time reach organizational goals with a legitimate value proposition called contribute to the common good. And of course, good leaders are aware of this, what I would call collective or mutual collectiveness. They are aware that value is not only created in economic terms or financial terms, but always contains a cultural, social, political, even aesthetical dimension, and have a broader notion of value creation which serves the different parties at different levels. And this value contribution at the very heart of our model is something which can't be stressed enough because it shifts entirely the discussion. It shifts the discussion from being a superwoman or superhero, being any hero, towards somebody contributing in a sense of making a difference by finding one's purpose through contributing. Technically speaking, in essence, it's self-efficacy in context. With this type of thinking in mind, at least in theory, this is an invitation to view leadership as something which helps the individual to flourish in community, and at the same time overcoming this contradiction of seeing individual growth and collective prosperity as mutually exclusive processes. Good leaders are able to see the bigger picture, and in this sense, our model is an invitation to step back, listen to oneself, ask for the purpose or purposes which go beyond the individual gains. A purpose bigger than myself for the sake of growing as a person. It's this tension field or this paradox, the individual grows and the collective grows and vice versa. I could say, nicely said, but hard to realize. I'd like to conclude with two messages left. One is a kind of relief in a sense. If you are not forced to be the man or woman who knows everything, see yourself as a contributor, reduces the stress level of excessive expectations in terms of delivery. Seeing oneself in a bigger game, also, and this is the second message, requires to have a sense of own purpose. And once you have this kind of self-confidence in your tasks, responsibilities, you might even survive hardship. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche one day framed it nicely by saying, the one who has a why may be almost any how. But the why, the deeper why, can't be prescribed. It's not just around the corner. It has to be created, maybe even by searching yourself in order to have this sense of coherence and belonging. And this might be, ladies and gentlemen, the toughest journey of all. The toughest journey of all to find your way in this ever-changing power game between the different dimensions of effectivity, responsibility, purpose, and entrepreneurial spirit. Thank you very much.